Tim Geithner, AIG, Chris Dodd, all this strange stuff. Our program, by the way, brought to you in part today by Hummer, this hour anyway. See your local Hummer dealer and test drive the mid-size Hummer H3 or the capable H3T. Four-Wheeler Magazine's 2009 Pickup Truck of the Year. So spring forward and take advantage of the attractive finance offers. Here's the question for our hour. When and how are we going to reinvent our economy so it works for the people and not the bankers? And, you know, this may be a golden opportunity. This may be a golden opportunity to restart the entire thing, to reboot the entire thing. Or maybe not. The Reich has already begun the slime, the spin, the lies. They're going after, for example, right now, Chris Dodd. First of all, let me just set this up. Chris Dodd had put into the original stimulus bill, the $450 billion, what was it, $400 and some odd billion stimulus bill, as it was at that time, had introduced a provision that would have limited. Well, here's the Senate. This is from an article from FoxBusiness.com report. Senator Chris Dodd on Monday night floated the idea. This is back in February. Floated the idea of taxing American International Group bonus recipients so the government could recoup some or all of the $450 million the company is paying to employees in a financial productions unit. The article later stated, while the Senate was constructing the $787 billion stimulus bill last month, Dodd added an executive compensation restriction to the bill. Indeed, as Dodd's amendment, as introduced, directed the Treasury Secretary to require each TARP recipient to, quote, meet appropriate standards for executive compensation and corporate governance. A prohibition on such TARP recipients paying or securing any bonus, retention award, or incentive compensation. So Chris Dodd puts into this piece of legislation basically something that would have prevented the paying out of these bonuses. Now, it got watered down in committee and ultimately got changed to be a prohibition against a prohibition, although Section 5.3 of TARP, which has nothing to do with Chris Dodd's amendment, actually says that the government can go back and rewrite any of the deals. So right now the Obama administration has all the power they need to blow up the AIG bonuses. They're just not using it under Section 5.3 of the TARP. But here's how Fox News is lying about, and by the way, you can check this out over at MediaMatters.org. They've done a great job of it. Not just Fox News, Limbaugh, the whole bunch of them, is lying about Chris Dodd's early attempts when the legislation was being written to limit this exact scenario.
But some of the anger is now targeting Capitol Hill, and here's why. Apparently, when senators debated the stimulus package, Connecticut Senator Chris Dodd, he created a loophole that allowed AIG to give out these bonuses.
You see, now he says apparently. It's a nice little catchphrase there. But no, Dodd didn't create a loophole. What Dodd did was he put in a piece of language that would limit the ability of it. But, you know, that's, you know, Fox, I mean.
Turns out the senator got more campaign donations from AIG last year than any other elected official. Rich Edson from Fox Business Network is here.
Therefore, there must be a conspiracy. And, you know, yeah, right. And then Limbaugh goes off on this thing, and, you know, in pretty strange fashion. Here's, you know, Limbaugh on this as he's doing his.
AIG bonus recipients to go commit suicide. Now, I know he said later, we're just talking about honor here. Dodd, in the Porculus bill, Dodd's own amendment, just to remind you, provides an exception for contractually obligated bonuses agreed on before February 11th, 2009, and these are, meaning exemption from any limits on them.
No, Rush, no. Not the case, sorry. The Senate did adopt Dodd's amendment, which would have limited them. It's a prohibition on such TARP recipients paying or accruing bonuses, retention awards, or incentive compensations. It adopted that by a voice vote. Subsequently, as noted over at Media Matters, subsequently the conference committee assigned to work out the difference between the Senate version of the bill and the House version which did not, by the way, contain an exemption, or a limitation, on executive compensation, included Dodd's amendment with several modifications. And we don't know who put those modifications in. In fact, in the category of we don't know, Sam Stein over at the Huffington Post today talking about how Ron Wyden and Olympia Snow had put forward a provision for this $787 billion bailout bill that would have limited any recipients of federal money to cap their bonuses of any kind to anybody at $100,000. And a $100,000 limit. And Wyden and Olympia Snow, the Republican, and Ron Wyden, the Democrat from Oregon. And it got blown up also. It got taken out in committee, and again, we don't know the name of the senator who took it out. And this is the kind of area where it would be nice to have some leadership from Harry Reid. I'm guessing he's probably the only guy who knows the name of the senator. It would be nice for the rest of us to know the name of the senator who took this out. Because what's going on is, we've just got this absolute mess. We've got an economy that is being made for the bankers. Everybody's looking at the bankers. I mean, why not just take AIG out of the equation and make whole the people that AIG is trying to make whole ourselves, and just throw them to the wolves. Say, hey, this company is, or at least take out the division, the 400 guys who were doing these phony assets. The history of this thing is, by the way, fascinating. The whole credit default swap thing. First of all, the seller of a credit default swap doesn't need to be a regulated entity. In other words, you can go into the credit default swap business. B, the buyers of a credit default swap don't need to own the underlying security. Now, a credit default swap is essentially an insurance policy. But a real insurance policy requires that you own something. In other words, if I go to an insurance company and I say, I want to get life insurance, I actually have to be me. Or if I say, I want to get life insurance on Sean and make myself the beneficiary, say I've got some nefarious scheme or whatever, sometimes it happens, right? Sean's giving me the, no, you don't. Sean has to actually exist. Or if I want to get, insurance on my houseboat that, if it burns down, God forbid, that, I'll be reimbursed, it has to actually exist. Well, with a credit default swap, which is just an insurance policy, it's just a bet, the actual underlying asset does not even have to be owned by, well, here's the language from Wikipedia, which has actually done a pretty good job of nailing it down. The buyer of a credit default swap does not need to own the underlying security or other form of credit exposure. In fact, the buyer does not even have to suffer a loss from the default event. By contrast, to purchase insurance, the insured is generally expected to have an insurable interest, such as owing a debt. Okay, now the history of these things, the whole concept, the whole idea of credit default swaps was invented in 1997, the waning years of the Clinton administration, by a team working for J.P. Morgan Chase. They were largely exempted from regulation by the SEC and the CFTC with the Commodity Futures Modernization Act of 2000. The bill that the Republicans pushed through, Phil Gramm pushed through, a number of Democrats and Bill Clinton eagerly signed, which is also famously known as the Enron loophole. Bill Clinton signed this into law on December 21st, 2000. Okay, so no market functionally existed for these things at all in 2000. By the end of 2007, and this was all on the Bush watch, at the end of 2007, the market for credit default swaps, $45 trillion. It really began to grow in 2003. By late 2007, it was 10 times as large as it had been 4 years previously. $45 trillion. Let me remind you once again, a trillion is 1,000 billion, a billion is 1,000 million, a million is 1,000 thousand. I mean, we're talking big numbers here, 45 trillion. And 45 trillion is the market in credit default swaps, something that didn't exist, the market for which functionally didn't exist when George Bush came into office. And 45 trillion is, what, 3-4 times the GDP of the United States? The entire gross domestic product of the United States, roughly 15 trillion. The GDP of the entire planet, roughly 65 trillion. So it's totally bizarre what's going on here. And Gaitner is finding himself in the middle of a firestorm.